this veneer using a mixture of glycerin and water. It's because this curly veneer doesn't want to stay flat. You can also kind of get a peek at how that's going to look once it's done. After I'm done with getting it wet with this glycerin water mixture, then I'm going to clamp it between two pieces of plywood with a bunch of paper in between. All right, pulling these out of the clamps. Nowhere to put anything. Hopefully this is flattened. So these went in the clamps for 2 days. Now they're flat, pretty flexible, mostly just flat. Mostly just flat. Okay, now that they've been flattened, we have a little bit of time to try and book match these and get them pressed. Surprisingly, these were already jointed pretty well before I flattened them. So might not even need to joint these again before I press them. What I'm going to do right now is just pull these together. Just hold it together with a little bit of blue painter's tape. The idea here is that this tape is pretty strong and easy to work with. Not sure if I like that gap. Its job here is to just hold this together long enough for me to get veneer tape onto the other side. I just have some veneering tape here and a wet sponge. Wrong side. Been a little bit since I've done this. Now this stuff is very thin, so if you just use the blue tape and you vacuum press, what can happen is the thickness of the tape can crush the veneer under that high pressure, and it'll make it look dented in where that tape was. Now, I don't want to use too much of this tape either, really. It's just holding it together until I can get everything assembled into the vacuum press. But I want to get these little end points flat. You want your veneer to be overlapping at all in the press. Now I'm going to set that aside while I do the veneer for the back of this. But on the other side here, I'm going to pull this blue tape before we do our glue up. For the back of this, I'm going to veneer it with this maple veneer, yeah. Fairly inexpensive stuff, but I've just rough marked out about how long a piece I'm going to need. Taped it out on both sides just so it holds it together. I've got a couple of 1/4 inch sacrificial pieces of plywood under here. And I'm just going to use my veneer saw to cut it to rough shape. It doesn't have to be that close. Just using cold pressed veneer glue. You want to cut the whole surface covered, but you don't want to overdo it. You want to glue pockets where it might create a bubble under your veneer. In the press.
Should that be long enough?
Should be. Use Titebond cold press glue. It says 45 minutes to 2 hours depending upon the atmosphere in your shop.
And you don't know the atmosphere, or?
No, we should have been good at the 45 minutes. Because we have a climate controlled shop. But you never can tell. So
yeah.
Oh no. Okay, so the veneers are glued down to the substrate. We have book matched bubinga, Waterfall bubinga on the top and hard maple on the bottom. Now, because of the nature of the veneer press, you don't really have 100% control where they're going to wind up. Some of this has wandered a little bit while the vacuum was going down. That's fine, but that means that my book match joint is no longer parallel to the side of the substrate that I cut earlier. And you can see that kind of overlap things willy-nilly because I knew this was going to happen. So you put my safety glasses on because I'm getting old and they're prescription. So I can find that center line here. What I want to do is mark from the center line over half the final dimension. No, not the final. I'm going to cut this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it a little oversized, but we're going to create a new straight line on this side that is parallel. All right, so one trick here, I grabbed these from Costco for like 30 bucks or something like that. They're just little USB lights and speakers, so I can listen to audiobooks sometimes when I'm in here. But I have a lot of bright shop lighting, which is often good, but sometimes it can blow away pencil marks. You know, you can't really see. I think we're gonna finish this later with lacquer, and I'll show you how this can help with that as well. But I can just turn this on and get a real quick raking light. And it lets me see my pencil marks a lot clearer. Because sometimes these lights are actually too bright. Now I can rip this to its final dimension on the bandsaw, or sorry, table saw. We left 6 1/4 inches here, so I'm going to rip it at 12 1/4, and then I can flip it around, rip it again at 12, and that way I'll take off this track saw cut with a hopefully cleaner cut from the table saw. Veneered. I'm going to wrap this in maple, but it's a veneer. It's like a 1/40th of an inch thick. You can kind of see it's just super thin. So I need these things to be pretty well aligned, and I'm abusing my domino joiner to do that. And I didn't get to the store today, so I'm out of little dominoes. So I made a bunch of these 5mm by 30mm dominoes just out of some scrap plywood I had laying around. This isn't really about being strong. It's about making sure that the faces come into coplanar with each other. I don't know, it might be a little too big, I guess. But once you get these kind of stuck in here, it's going to hook into the other side, and they're going to make sure that the trim in the main piece is in the same plane. Okay, so what I wound up doing with this one is I glued in the center domino, and for each of the side pieces of the miter, I cut a tight fit domino, mounted it to the center point, and then I could score mark where to make my miter cuts. Okay, so life lesson time for when you screw up. I had routed a bunch of dominoes, 5mm dominoes, to try to align the solid maple edge banding with the veneer. And you know, I was hoping this would work. I'd done this before with splines, and there's always a little bit of variance to it, and you can't really get a perfectly flush glue up with your veneer. I wish I knew how to do this. This also kind of failed. Mostly was pretty good, but every once in a while there'd be a place where the veneer was proud, and you know, you can't really sand that back down. So the idea of frame wrapping these was actually the second design for this. My initial design didn't do that, and I was just going to glue some stuff on. I this away proud and either sink some glass in it or flush trim it, which definitely works. And since no one's going to come measure that reveal, you'll get away with it. So I cut the frames back off the thing with the track saw. Well, one edge with the track saw, then ripped on the table saw, cross cut on the table saw. So I lost about 1/8 of an inch of width, and honestly, like no more than a 32nd maybe in length. That's just struggling to get everything glued up. I don't think everything came out quite square. So the new version of this, we slightly smaller tables, which is actually probably good given the size of our house, and should be a lot harder to screw up. Now I'm going to replace these 5mm dominoes here with 6mm dominoes. So if you ever make this mistake, you can route new domino holes in the same spot, make them just a little bit bigger. It'll consume the old domino that was stuck in here. It'll be like it never happened. It's just a little test piece, but I'm going to center it roughly here, 1/4 inch above, 1/4 inch below, 1/8 inch round over that, maybe put an 1/8 inch piece of glass in it is my thought. So to get that 1/4 inch offset relative to this domino position, I'm going to unlock my fence height adjustment here, right? Just raise it up. See, it lands on this stop here, and I'm just going to stick my 1/4 inch piece in there. Pinch it on the stop, lock it down. There you go. Should be 1/4 inch higher. Let's try. So here's the trick. I have a tight domino here and loose dominoes here. Tight domino here, loose dominoes here. Right now I have just 6 in there, tight, and then loose on the ends. Just in case there's a little bit of play in the panel. Now it's not, I'm telling you right now, it's not perfect. It's very close. This side's better, but it's gonna be what it's gonna be. So I'm not gonna be able to bend this hard maple to make it flatter than it is. So I need to do miters here, that way, and that way. And by putting this together with the tight dominoes, I know that when I take this apart, put it back together, they're going to register in the same spots. So instead of measuring, I can just come here and mark a line at each of these ends. And cut my miters to those lines. This miter didn't come together perfectly. Just have to nip a little bit off with the chisel so that it meets a little nicer in the corner. you've been watching this and wondering why I've been fighting so hard to keep these panels, you're about to see why. Just doing the cleaning with mineral spirits before I seal them up and move them out of the shop so I can build the bases.